committee was to request a list with a paramedic, realizing that if the department at some point decides to move in that direction, this is an opportunity for us to bring on someone who already has those qualifications and ultimately save the town some money down the road. Doesn't cost us anything extra to do it right now. That person would still need to attend the Mass Fire Academy in July, as I understand it, with the chief, regardless of whether they were to be a basic EMT or to be a paramedic. And so, that's all I could say.
Put together a kind of a quick synopsis for you on what Greg is talking about. If we decided to go for an ALS person, to send a list back for an ALS person at this time. Basically, the top tells us that if we submit the list and get an ALS guy, we're looking to get an ALS person, and that would give us 2 ALS people, paramedics, and 1 intermediate. We're looking at a January retirement in the near future. Hasn't set a complete date yet, but we're looking for a January retirement for 1 of our members now, which will give us an additional person, bring us up to 3. And if we were able to get the ALS, the firefighter grant, that would give us 4. We'd end up with 7 ALS people by January to start our program. If we go and change our policy now and go for an ALS person now, and we do get the grant, we'll end up with 7 people, 6 people right off the bat that we can put as ALS. Basically, if you decide to go to ALS, we return the list with no action at this time. HRD would put a rush on the next ALS list, the next list for us, as long as we submitted the paperwork back to them with a Form 13. We will also ask the Office of Emergency Services to forward its letter of intention to pursue ALS through a gentleman named Bud McDonough, who's the gentleman in charge of the ambulance for the state. We're looking to, in another 2 or 3 weeks for the list, allowing the personnel to sign the list. The department will do an interview process as soon as possible, 3 to 5 days, counting on weekends to get an interview set up, selection done. 1 or 2 weeks for the police department to perform a background check. At that time, we'll propose to hire a person authorized by the board and the town administrator. At that time, we'd submit the person for a physical agility test, which is required. Psychological test, which is required by the town, and a physical exam, all required. Once we hire the person, he'd have to be shadowed, which means another 5 to 8 weeks of overtime that we have right now, because the person just can't walk in the door and go to work. Then when they come after the shadowing, we're looking at 11 weeks for the Mass Fire Academy. I've got a date now of July 5th, and when they come out of the Mass Fire Academy, put on a shift. If we decide to do an ALS, we're looking at probably a June 14th start date for the person to go online on a shift. And then it follows July 5th, they'd come off the shift and go into a 12-week, 11-week program at the academy. So the quickest we'll get the gentleman, or the person, pardon me, person back from the academy is September 13th. If we decide to stay with the program we're doing right now, we've already had our interviews and so forth. May 10th would be their start date after the 6 weeks of shadowing. July 5th, the academy, back from the academy, September 13th. It's approximately 4 to 5 weeks of extra hiring of overtime. By the time we sent this list back, got the list, did the process, and picked the person we wanted and put them online, the approximate week will cost us about $7,800. And if we decide not to and we keep an EMT, as we're proposed to do right now, if we decide to send them to school, we're looking at about $30,000 to become a medic. So basically, what we're looking to do is to find out if the town would like to go on an ALS program. we'd have to do is send the letter to HR and tell them we were interested in providing an ALS service to the community, and we'd get an ALS list. At that time, we'd pick an ALS person from that list and go through the hiring process, as I've stated here. The savings to the community, if we do go to ALS down the road, is about $22,000 in the training program. This number that we have here, the $30,000, came out of our ALS meetings and so forth. If we took somebody in the department and sent them to school, paid overtime for them to go, filled shifts while they were gone, that's where that $30,000 came from. It's divided out on the bottom of the slip right there.
So,
If we decide to go to an ALS program and we send them a letter, it is our understanding that if the town decides and deems that they will not go to ALS down the road, we can stop the process and go back to hiring EMTs. Am I correct, Greg?
Yes.
it's my understanding that the letter of intent that gets sent to Mr. McDonough at the Office of EMS is a non-binding letter of intent.
Right.
Correct?
Yes.
And I know you've attached it here, there's a checklist of
Yes.
other things the town has to satisfy and also negotiate with the union in order to, not putting the cart before the horse, but would have to satisfy in order to move forward with ALS, correct?
Right.
And all these items in the checklist would have to be satisfied, well, we would have to satisfy EMS, we'd have to
The Office of
complete these.
Emergency Services, yes.
Right. And if I understand also, and we've had discussions regarding this, Chief, the difference between moving forward with a BLS firefighter now or a EMT now versus a paramedic is a total of 5 to 6 weeks in overtime, correct?
Right.
Because the shadow period you talked about,
6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks, regardless of whether it's a EMT or a paramedic that you hire, correct?
Right.
And while that person's being shadowed, you're still filling the shift that you currently have open
Yes.
on an overtime basis.
Yes.
So just by hiring someone that May 10th start date, you're not eliminating your overtime at that point, correct?
Not eliminating the overtime at all.
So
Either
it's-
person we bring in will have to go through a 6 to 8 week program to learn the job before they go out the street by themselves.
in the earliest, either one of these candidates could start the fire academy would be July 5th, correct?
Yes, I have an opening for that date. I've already
And
secured an
that,
opening.
and it doesn't matter whether that's an
Doesn't make any difference
EMT or
who it
a
is.
paramedic.
Plus, the person already has that training.
Unless he has that training, then we get around it.
Right, the academy training.
Yeah.
But
Do you have to go to a rehire list?
This is a rehire list, but the last rehire list that we got
That wasn't for ALS.
wasn't for ALS. Didn't have any ALS personnel on it. Only one person signed. He never came in and got the package.
No, I understand,
Everybody
but
that's
is
on
that,
there
is that
is-
a different list though than?
No, they sent us the entire rehire list, and
essentially-
nobody came in and signed it.
I didn't realize
Except
if
for
it
one
was.
guy. The lady I talked to is Regina Caggiano. She's at the HIV office. She's the woman who told me that we couldn't do this with a letter from you folks to.
And I've, so the board knows, I've spoken to Mr. McDonough at the Office of EMS. He's confirmed with me that the letter of intent just has to simply be a letter of intent that we're looking to move forward with providing ALS service, that it is non-binding. And there's a whole, as we see here, I talked to him over the phone, I didn't have the checklist, but I see the checklist tonight, of various things we need to complete. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
It's
We
15.
we don't have to meet this whole checklist though, right, Chief, up front?
No, we don't have to meet the checklist. We have to come up with a 1 to 3 year proposal of how we're going to
Okay.
meet the checklist.
Oh, okay, that's what I was wondering, okay.
There is an added cost for us to go to ALS. It boosts up our drug and food and drug license by a couple of $100 for each ambulance. And there's also a quality assurance that's gonna boost because we have to get a doctor on board with us. We've already talked to a gentleman who's willing to take us on and I believe it's like $1,000 or $2,000 a year.
But we have to affiliate with a hospital.
We have to affiliate with a hospital also.
I think, timing's everything here, but it's, I don't know where you're at with this subcommittee, but my guess is, we're not anywhere near even having any discussions with the collective bargaining unit in relation to moving to ALS. So I don't know what the expectations are of the union in relation to increased wages, in relation to who's gonna cover training and costs associated with it, which is, how many hours? 1,500? 1,500?
Take some of your paramedics to recertify.
Oh, from $1,500.
1,500, I believe it's 1,500 hours.
It's a year's school.
Yeah, I know, it's very intensive, I understand that, yeah, 1,500 hours.
That's why we're
You
looking
know,
at the
1,500 hours, you know, it is the expectation, and is this board, gonna be committing to, you know, covering the 1,500 hours? The cost of the course, the 1,500 hours?
Well, I think,
I mean, there's an awful lot to talk about.
no, I agree, absolutely agree.
You know-
We're not there yet. I think the next step for our ALS subcommittee is to put the numbers to the information that we received and make a presentation to the full board here. So, no, we're not close to reaching any sort of agreement with the firefighters union. However, if we do end up going there, I don't see, personally don't see a negative to going forward with an ALS firefighter at this point in time. It doesn't bind us to anything. We currently have a paramedic on staff, and I don't believe there's any difference in terms of his contract as opposed to the other.
It isn't because we don't provide the service.
Right.
And we currently don't have enough members of the union that have, you know, gone out on their own and got the certification,
True.
as the one member has. And there's another member of the department that's actually halfway there, or part of the way there, you know, on their own. But in order for us to get to a certain level, the board has to make a determination that, you know, this is the way we're gonna go and we're gonna do it. We're not even close.
No, we're not there yet.
We're not
but
even close.
I don't
And
see
I
a
guess my-
negative to going forward and hiring an ALS certified paramedic at this point, because if we do make a decision down the road to go forward with ALS service provided by our firefighters, we're that much further ahead of the game by hiring now someone who's a paramedic. We save that cost. It's not costing us,
And what if we don't go that way? You know, what are we doing to the individual that's taken it on with an expectation that we're heading in that direction? I mean, we're asking for this list because we're signing a letter of intent.
right?
And we don't even know if that is our intent yet, because we don't know, we haven't quantified the costs. And again, I would like to see us provide it, but I can't, in good conscience, sign a letter of intent without having the foggiest idea as to what our exposure's going to be. And I think we are months away, once a determination is made, in the form of negotiations, because there's a whole host of issues that our current workforce has to be concerned with. I mean, not all of them are gonna go and get the certification. Not all of them, you know, what happens when we hire and there's gonna be layoffs? I mean, are we gonna honor seniority? You know, I for one say yes, but I mean, you know,
I would say
well,
yes,
what
too.
happened? You say yes, but, you know, last one in, first one out happens to be your paramedic. There goes your commitment and what you've agreed to. I mean, so you've got a whole host of issues that we have responsibility to our current workforce, we have responsibility to the new hires, we have responsibility to our word as far as our intent. Is it truly our intent to move forward and do it? I can't honestly say that we're there yet. And
Well-
again, it happens to be timing again. I mean, if we had started this process about a year ago when we first suggested it, we'd be way ahead of the game, wouldn't we?
We probably would be, but we can't look back and redo.
No, but I also
but
can't
we're-
jump into it
we're-
with both feet either.
But I don't believe anyone's asking us to jump into it both feet without doing the complete analysis. And my specific question to Mr. McDonough was, is this binding on the town in any sort of way? The answer directly to me was, no. It's not binding us to move forward ALS, providing with an ALS service. As you see, there's a full checklist here, and part of it is reaching agreements with the union. And if we don't reach those agreements, we can't move forward with ALS. So